in these cynical times, a stereotypical.
In the end, though, Booker T lost that night.
But why does Booker have to keep saying it?
WrestleMania XIX. Seattle's Safeco Field. 54,000 people watching Booker T flat on his back after a pedigree, and Triple H just standing there, not covering him, not moving. The referee counting nothing because there was nothing to count yet. The crowd sensing something was wrong. And then, finally, the pin. The loss. The moment that would define exactly what wrestling's backstage politics could do to a career when the wrong people held the power. But here's the thing about Booker T. He didn't just absorb it, he cataloged it. Over decades of podcasts, unfiltered interviews, and shoot comments that pulled no punches, he built a detailed record of the egos, the unsafe workers, the political operators, and the locker room disasters that stood between him and where he deserved to be. 8 names, 4 categories. One man's honest accounting of every friction point that shaped his career. So who made Booker T's list, and what does each of them reveal about the world he spent 25 years navigating? To understand it, you have to go back before the fame. Back to Texas in the mid-90s, where one of the bitterest grudges on that entire list was being built one training session at a time. Anthony Norris, ring name Ahmed Johnson, was one of the most physically imposing wrestlers in North America in the mid-90s. The first African-American Intercontinental Champion in WWE history. A man whose King of the Ring 1996 tournament win announced him as a legitimate main event threat. But inside training rooms and locker rooms, Norris built a different reputation entirely. Booker T has said when Booker refused on safety grounds to keep absorbing that powerbomb, and Norris never forgave him for it. By November 2023, Booker had stopped calling him Ahmed Johnson altogether. He used his real name on the Hall of Fame podcast, and then he called him something else. A notorious, lying, low-down piece of, you know what? Not a complaint, not a measured critique. A verdict still firm after 30 years. Booker accused Norris of fabricating stories about his past, including claims that he'd played professional football for the Dallas Cowboys, and alleged that Norris actively tried to sabotage Booker's career by deliberately tanking a match. He said that when he later spotted Norris at an airport, he simply refused to acknowledge him. Some grudges don't soften with distance, but personal grievances only tell part of the story. The bigger obstacle in Booker T's career wasn't one dangerous man in a training room. It was a system of political power so entrenched at the top of WCW that rising talent had almost nowhere to go. And nobody embodied that system more completely than Hulk Hogan. Hogan's WCW contract guaranteed him creative control over his character and his matches. That meant if Hogan didn't want to lose to you, he didn't have to, and there was nothing the company could do about it. For years, that clause functioned as a velvet rope around the main event, keeping emerging talent off the top of the card regardless of crowd response or creative logic. Booker T was stuck behind it through most of his WCW run. Then came July 9th, 2000. Bash at the Beach, Daytona Beach. Jeff Jarrett was the WCW World Heavyweight Champion, and Hogan was scheduled to work him in the opening match. What happened instead became one of wrestling's most disputed incidents. Jarrett lay down the moment Hogan touched him. Hogan pinned him in under 2 minutes, grabbed the belt, and left the building. Vince Russo came back to the ring and cut a scathing promo, effectively stripping and voiding that championship. Whether that promo was coordinated or a genuine shoot response is a debate that hasn't settled in 25 years. What isn't disputed is what came next. Booker T defeated Jeff Jarrett later that same night and won his first WCW World Heavyweight Championship. The title he'd been blocked from for years came to him through chaos because the political structure Hogan had built finally collapsed under its own weight. 1 year later, with WCW absorbed into WWE following the March 2001 purchase, Booker T was carrying that legacy title and a responsibility far larger than just winning matches. WWE's plan was audacious: run a separate WCW brand on Raw with its own roster, its own commentary, its own championship. If it worked, former WCW talent had a real home in the new landscape. If it failed, they were absorbed and marginalized. July 20, 2001, Tacoma Dome. Booker T versus Marcus Buff Bagwell for the WCW Championship. Broadcast as the main event of Raw is War, with WCW graphics, Scott Hudson calling the action, and Stacy Keibler introducing the match. The Tacoma crowd, never a WCW stronghold, rejected it almost from the opening bell. The energy died. Dave Meltzer, covering it for the Wrestling Observer, called that first impression of WCW on Raw downright scary. and then the situation deteriorated further. Reports out of that week described Bagwell arriving with a poor attitude, breaking character during the match itself, and delivering a performance that confirmed everyone's worst fears about how this experiment might land. He was released on July 9th, 1 week after the Tacoma match when he arrived for the Atlanta Raw. Industry accounts included a detail that became impossible to shake, that Bagwell's mother had personally called WWE's offices to complain about her son's travel and scheduling arrangements. Whether that call was the final straw or simply the most damning point in a longer record of complaints, the effect was the same. Bagwell was gone. The standalone WCW brand concept was abandoned. The invasion angle absorbed former WCW talent into WWE's programming on WWE's terms, not theirs. Booker T has been direct about what that meant. One man's professionalism failure closed a door that had taken years to crack open. So Booker T entered the broader WWE era carrying those scars, and found himself in a company where the backstage power flowed through a different man entirely. Triple H in 2003 was the World Heavyweight Champion, the figurehead of Evolution, and as every locker room in the building understood Stephanie McMahon's husband. Political influence didn't require a contract clause. It was structural. When Booker T won a 20-man battle royal on February 24th to earn the #1 contendership, the road to WrestleMania XIX should have been building towards something meaningful. Instead, the build became a masterclass in uncomfortable subtext. The promo Triple H cut on March 3rd stopped the room. He dismissed Booker's WCW title reigns, invoked Booker's criminal past, and said it plainly that people like Booker T would never be World Heavyweight Champion in WWE. The official defense from WWE and Triple H was that people like you referred to Booker's time in prison rather than his race. But a lot of people in that arena heard something else. A lot of commentators wrote something else. And the image from WrestleMania XIX, Triple H standing over Booker T, taking his time before making the cover, winning cleanly, confirmed every suspicion the build had planted. Booker T, when pressed about the loss in later years, landed on one line that manages to be both funny and quietly devastating. I'll tell you what, if I did feel any way about losing, when I got the check, all of it went away. That's one way to process it. Another way is to note that Triple H held the championship and the platform, and Booker T's ceiling in that particular chapter of his WWE career never quite cleared. But Booker T was never just a man absorbing political setbacks. He was also the locker room's enforcer. And by 2006, SmackDown needed one badly. Batista had given an interview to The Sun in early 2005, suggesting that SmackDown was hard to watch, that pride and passion were missing from the brand. For veterans who'd built that locker room, it landed like a challenge. Batista was ascending fast and apparently not shy about who noticed it. Then came the SummerSlam commercial shoot in May 2006, out in Encino. Reports described selective handshakes, dismissive comments, Batista conducting himself as though the SmackDown veterans weren't worth his time. Words were exchanged. A door closed, and behind it, Booker T and Batista fought. Contemporary accounts described Booker mounting Batista and landing strikes before witnesses entered and separated both men. Both left marked. In January 2026, responding to viral footage of old comments about the incident, Booker was precise. "I didn't pick a fight with anybody. I don't want anybody to think I was a bully and would be going around picking fights with people. I didn't pick a fight with anybody, but I did finish the fight with Batista." He added that Batista underestimated him because of the size difference. That was his mistake. The feud became official programming through SummerSlam 2006. In real life, Booker has since said he'd embrace Batista without hesitation. Men and testosterone, he's called it. But the message delivered in that room didn't need a warm resolution to carry weight. Not every clash on Booker T's list was about ego or entitlement. Some of it was purely physical. William Regal and Fit Finlay were European veterans shaped by a tradition of catch-as-catch-can wrestling, where everything was supposed to hurt on purpose. Working them wasn't a match, it was a test. Booker has admitted openly that he initially hated working both men. Their style didn't negotiate, and the stiffness they brought left opponents genuinely bruised, but something shifted. The friction became respect. By 2006, Regal and Finlay were standing at King Booker's side during his world title reign on SmackDown, aligned as part of the court. Booker has since said that working them became some of the most fun he had in a ring. "Never in a million years I thought I'd have so much fun working with William Regal and Finlay. I hated working those guys, they were stiff. The hate evolved into appreciation, which is the rarest ending on this entire list. The generational dimension of Booker T's frustrations came into focus in August 2011 at a WWE tryout session. Matt and Nick Jackson, the team that would become one of the most influential tag acts of the next decade, were there auditioning. And they made a mistake that in traditional locker room culture carried real consequences. One of the brothers sat on or leaned against Booker T's jacket. Neither one introduced himself, no handshake, no acknowledgement of the veterans in the room. In the world Booker T came up through, that wasn't nerves, that was a failure of protocol. He told the story publicly. The Bucks appeared on his Heated Conversations podcast in 2018 and offered their side that they were intimidated, trying to stay invisible, not trying to disrespect anyone. They worked it out. The Bucks even acknowledged that the story, once it circulated, shaped their outsider persona in ways that ultimately served them. Booker was careful afterward about how he framed it. I told the story the way it happened, but no malice or anything like that. The piece was genuine, but his underlying point didn't move. I think a lot of the young generation just don't want to hear that. It's about them and the way they do it. Which brings us to the final name. By August 2023, CM Punk's backstage conflicts at AEW were circulating across the industry. Incidents with younger talent, a reputation for demanding deference rather than building it, friction that seemed to follow him from building to building. Booker T had something to say about it, not from personal grievance, but from a position of studied experience. He reached back to his own entry into TNA as an established veteran, walking into a locker room where Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, and Bobby Roode didn't owe him anything. I was the older guy going into TNA. And I'm going to tell you right now, I had to earn Samoa Joe's respect. I had to earn AJ Styles' respect. I wanted those guys to know that I was on their team and on their side. That, in Booker's view, is how it's supposed to work. Respect isn't a rank you carry from a previous company into a new one. It's something you build every time you walk through a different door. The irony is that Triple H and Hulk Hogan never seemed to understand that model either, because they didn't have to. Neither did Batista, before he got reminded in a room with a closed door. Ahmed Johnson treated it as irrelevant from the start. Buff Bagwell burned a legitimate business opportunity to the ground because he assumed his position was already secured. Booker T spent 30 years navigating men who confused status with respect, political leverage with earned authority, and physical size with the ability to finish a fight. His list of 8 names isn't a grudge collection. It's a map of every lesson the wrestling business taught him the hardest possible way, and a quiet, persistent argument for the kind of leader he chose to be instead.